I literally have no idea how this looks right now. I'm looking up at a camera. This can't be right. I'm doing something wrong here. You know, I don't care if it's even aimed in the right direction right now. I think this is aimed in the right direction now. I have no idea. Wonder if I'll even keep the camera on. I've tried to do this video since January? Something like that. I think it was January. It's been a... oh my god. And this is why I have been not saving any of these attempts at making a video all these months. Because I start trying to talk about her, and I freeze. I think it's just a few seconds here and there. But it has been over a minute at times. I should probably just edit out any freezes I have later on after it's done recording. Like, no joke. I'm walking home from work the other day, and I stop at a stoplight, you know, and it's red, and I start thinking about her, you know, because I'm bored shitless, you know, just waiting for a light to change, you know, it's too much time for me to wait, you know, and, you know, I start thinking about her, and I start thinking about what it was like when I came home in January, on the 16th of January, I think it was, and found her on the bathroom floor. And the next thing I know, it's like, you know, cars pass, and then the other cars pass, and I'm like, wait a minute. Did I just miss my light? I'm like, oh well, I'll get the next time it turns, you know? And I'm still thinking about her. And then it's like, it's just awkward. And then all of a sudden I realize, like, cars have passed by 2 or 3 times, and I'm like, oh my god, I just lost easily a minute of time, easily. And that's how trying to do these videos were. It's like, I start talking, or I just press record, and I start wanting to talk about her, and I just get locked in, replaying it over and over, you know? I don't know. I guess I'm not ready yet. I was gonna do this video on her, talk about her, talk about why she's not here now, why she's not alive anymore, and I can't. I guess I'm not ready yet. I will be, eventually. You know, I'll do a video on her eventually. It's just not yet. It kind of pisses me off, because this is like, I mean, she turned 26. 3 days later, she's brain dead. A couple days after that, family pulls the plug. I don't blame them, because I was there when she had that last little seizure and that spark went out. I knew she wasn't there anymore. Boy, isn't this fun? I'm gone most of 2020 because, you know, I'm enjoying life. I'm having a normal human life, you know? You're living with someone, they love you back, You're both talking kids, condoms off, you know, and, you know, then in 2021, I haven't been around because I've been grieving their passing. Isn't that great? I mean, just like a few days before that went down, you know, we were up at a store, and she did what she always did. She would pull me into the baby section, you know, by my arm, and she would get all morose, and she would look at me with these, like, sad eyes, and she'd be picking up baby booties and, like, little tiny t-shirts, and she would sniffle, and I'm like, good God, I'm there. Let's do this, you know? And she's like, you know, because until then, we had tried, but, you know, we went back to using condoms. Let me tell you something. Condoms are bullshit. I'm getting off of talking about her because my brain's starting to crash. I'm not ready to talk about her yet. Yeah, it crashes my brain. I'm trying to talk, and it's just a flood of memories and a flood of what-ifs. The what-ifs kill you when it comes to being distraught. The what-ifs are the worst. It's like, what if this? Oh, the blood clot in her head wouldn't have formed. Oh, what if I forced her to get up and walk around the block or something? You know, maybe the blood flow would have been just a little bit different and a blood clot wouldn't have formed. You see what I mean. So yeah, I don't want to talk about it right now. But yeah, condoms are bullshit. It's like, I mean, I've been really lucky when it comes to lovers and stuff like that, and like even my ex-wife. It's like, you know, chicks are always either sterile, you know, they're snipped or whatnot, or they're on that magical creation of human ingenuity called Implanon, you know? It's like chicks get like a little grain of rice type thing in their armpit or in their armpit or in their elbow, and after that, they can fuck like rabbits for many months. It's a godlike invention. Anyway, it's like, I've been really lucky because almost every single person I've been with, and it's been quite a few now, I never had to worry about condoms. It was nice, you know? Straight in, anywhere you want. And it's like, you know, so, oh God, it was actually years ago now. Time's flying. But I had a friend come over here, you know. I talked about her once before on my videos here. It's like, she comes over, she doesn't have birth control going on, and she's fertile. She's not sterile at all, you know. And it's like, you know, I'm like, well, shit, I better buy condoms. Damn. I guess I have to now. And I thought I was a smart boy. Oh, I thought I was so clever, because I go to the store and I buy a big box of, like, a sampler pack of all these different Trojans and shit. I'm like, well, with this many options, how can I go wrong? Holy shit. Like, I remember being a kid and, like, I'd go through my dad's sock drawer and I'd find, like, condoms, like old school condoms, and, you know, even back then as a kid, you know, I'd put them on and I'm like, they're kind of baggy. And the rubber band at the end is kind of loose, you know, because I was a kid. I shouldn't have been in that drawer, but I got bored. So, you know, here I am, full-grown adult, you know, and I take one of the condoms out, I put it on, and it's like, okay, the length is fine. 7 inches? Fine, no problem. Fits perfectly. The rubber band at the base. What a torture device. chicks I be talking to chicks, and they're like, look at this dick pic this guy sent me, and they sent it to me, and I'm like, and did you also happen to notice that the guy has his thumb on the top of his dick? And they're like, yeah, why do guys do that? I go, because there's a vein at the top of the dick that doesn't let the blood flow go back out of the dick, so it looks like they've got this giant throbbing erection that's not actually what it always is. And they're like, so when you see a thumb on top of a guy's dick, they're faking how big their dick is? I'm like, mm-hmm. Okay. So this deluxe box of Trojan samplers, you know? I put this fucking thing on. It fills out. It's good. It's not baggy like I remember the ones in my dad's drawer being. The rubber band at the base is retarded tight. Like, it's not so tight that it's holding that top vein and keeping the blood in and making you look big. It's doing the opposite. It's like crushing 2 other veins underneath or some shit. And it's like, it hurts. It hurts so much that I actually start to go limp after a minute or two. I'm like, ow. Ow, my dick. It's that bad. It's like, you ever be petting like a cat or a dog, and you see something in its fur, and you're like, and you take your fingernails like this, and you're like, and you pop a flea? It feels like someone's doing that to my dick. They're just taking my dick and going, and squeezing the bottom, trying to kill my dick. So that's fun. You know? Absolutely sucks. Absolutely sucks. So, you know, the next chick I'm with, I'm just going to have to buy a whole bunch of different fucking condoms and find out what one works. You know, but it's like, I could just picture that, you know. Someone's there in bed, I'm like, here's condom number 1. That one's no good. Here's condom number 2. And just go through like a whole... Oh, God. So, you know, again, Jinzo the smart boy. I'm like, I know. We'll do something different. So we're on the bed, we're spooning, you know, and she starts having a knob hitting her in the small of her back, you know. And she's like, oh, something's there. And I'm like, yeah. I go, oh, I just found a place to put it. And she's like, be my guest. So I reach down, and it's not easy to get in there, but I pop into her butt. And, you know, what's wrong with a butt, seriously? It's like you can just do whatever you wish there. And it's like, so I'm going for a minute or two, and she giggles. And I'm going for a minute or two, and then she lets out this cute little moan. And, you know, I'm going along, I'm just holding her like this, you know, and doing my thing from behind, you know. And she goes, we should stop this. I'm like, what? She's like, we should probably stop. I'm like, that's insane. Bam! It just keep going, you know. And then like a minute or two later, she's like, nah, but we should stop. I'm like, why on earth would we stop? That makes no sense. And she's like, So I'm going along, and she giggles, and I'm like, what's so funny? She's like, nothing. Now, when you're a guy, and you're railing someone, it's kind of, it doesn't send you into it doesn't ram your boner into the dirt, but it kind of makes you pause for a moment. Like, why is this chick giggling while I'm trying to fuck them? You know, and I'm like, that was weird. So like a minute or two later go by, and she giggles again, and I'm like, what is so funny here? I'm missing this. And I'm trying not to be angry, because, you know, when you're in fuck mode, you're not thinking, you don't want to think. You want to be a beast that just wants to inseminate something, you know. And it's like, she's like, you don't know where you are, do you? does that mean? So I just keep going. And she goes, we really should stop. And I'm like, why? I go, do you want me to stop? And she goes, no, I don't. I'm like, okay then. Back to it. And then she giggles again. And she goes, really? For real though? You really don't know where you are? And I'm like, you know, now my brain's been thinking about this for a few minutes, you know? And I'm like, what does she mean by this? And I'm like, look, if you're going to tell me that I'm not in your ass, I'm going to call bullshit, because this is tight as fuck. And she's like, okay. So I keep going. And, you know, she lets out another cute moan, and I'm, you know, that just fires me up. And then, like, really fast after that, you know, I guess she realized she was a little bit too into it. You know, she sticks her hand back there. She's like, stop, 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 stop. I'm like, why? Why are we stopping? And she goes, look down. I'm like, oh my fucking God. I am not in your ass. Holy shit. She goes, yeah, hope I'm not pregnant. I'm like, well, I didn't come yet, but I've been oozing like a motherfucker in there. I mean, we're a frothy mess back there already, you know. I'm like, I've been oozing for the past I don't know how long. Oh my God, one little drop of me could knock up a town, you know. And she's like, yeah, oh well, you know. And I'm like, I don't understand that. How can you be that tight in front? I mean, that feels like an ass. It's like, what the hell? She's like, well, thank you. Yeah. And I'm like, this is weird. This is just weird. I'm like, okay. I go, yeah, definitely, we gotta stop this. So I pull out. And, you know, I'm like, you know, it's not entirely impossible that you're pregnant at this moment. She's like, I'm not going to worry about it now. And I'm like, well, I guess the only thing to do at this point is get to where I was supposed to be in the first place. And she's like, mm-hmm. I'm like, okay then. So now, you know, now I've gained intelligence, and I'm actually using my eyes to look down. And I guide myself right to it, smush up against it. Nothing. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, what the fuck? And, you know, I kind of like hold her butt cheeks, and I spread her just so I can see just a little bit of hole. I can't get in. I can't get in, and it is the most frustrating thing in the world. I mean, 1 minute ago, I was almost ready to blow. And now I'm just like stuck outside in the cold, and I'm like, the fuck is happening here? So, you know, she's like, oh, well, you just gotta keep trying, I guess. So, I take my hand, and I'm like, and I'm like, slap. I smear it all over me, and I'm like, I smear some on her. You know, everything's just a slippery, wet mess, you know. I tried for a minute. I tried for an entire easy 60 seconds. I'm poking, and I'm poking at this thing. I'm not getting in. I'm blown away by this. This doesn't happen to me. I'm shocked. And it's like, I'm like, hold up a second. Let me do this right. So I reach down, and there's a jar of fucking coconut oil from the last person that was there, you know. It's like the last person there wanted to learn how to do hand jobs, you know. And she's like, well, it should be slippery, shouldn't it? So I had a jar of fucking coconut oil just sitting around randomly next to the bed. How convenient. And, you know, I put some of that shit on there. It liquefies, you know. And, you know, I'm like, here we go. It's in time. I still couldn't get in. I was rock hard. I was rocked the fuck hard. Couldn't get in her ass. And I'm like, my brain's crashing. And I'm like, I'm gonna take just a quick breather, just to collect myself here. And she's like, It's like me trying to bump into her butt. Any of you old enough to remember the old game Sinistar? You know, you're a little ship flying around in space, and there's these little drones that are attacking you, and there's these asteroids, and you have to bang your ship like boom, 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 against the asteroid to bump out these little parts to a bomb you need. And you collect enough bomb parts and you can blow up this skull head thing. Beware, I live. I'm doing this to her ass, you know, and I'm like, okay. So, you know, I put my hand down there, stiff as a fucking board. Big, dumb, red, bright red, slippery, shiny thing. And a hole that's right there. It's right there. It's right there. Boom, 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 boom. It's like fucking Sinistar. I'm just banging into this fucking thing and it's doing nothing. And I'm getting frustrated. And like 2 minutes pass. And I'm like, now, at this point, I'm squeezing the base of my dick as hard as it can fucking go. There's no blood going in or out. It's just this fucking thing sticking out like this far. Just this red, like, thing. You know. It's like you're choking someone and their face is turning purple. That's what I'm doing to my poor dick. And I'm like, can't get in her ass. And I just take my hand off. And I start going limp and I'm like, what the fuck? What the fuck is going on? What the fuck is going on? And she thinks this is hilarious. She's like, I'm like, okay, I need this explained to me. And she's like, what? I go, you told me that you love it in the ass. And she goes, I do. And I'm like, you told me that every person you've been with, you love it when they get in your ass. And she's like, I do. I'm like, well, what the fuck is happening here? And she's like, and she turns herself around and she looks down and she looks at me and she puts her hand out and holds my face and she goes, Jinzo, you're the thickest person that ever tried to go in there. I'm like, no. And she's like, yeah. I'm like, no way. And she's like, two things are going on in my head here. The first thing, the immediate thing is, I'm like fucking Herman Munster, you know? I'm like Herman Munster sitting on a park bench, and like a guy sitting next to him, and he just like taps him on the shoulder, and he's like, you hear that? She said I'm the thickest. And, you know, and then quickly reality hits. And I'm like, so I can't go in? I feel like a wet cat, a cat that just got dunked in the sink into like a flea bath, you know, it's like all just soaked. It's like, I can't go in? And she's like, well, you know. And I'm like, and what sucks here is I go, you have to leave soon. Like, there's not even time to like go in the drawer and whip out the butt plugs here, because I don't even have time to like prepare you for this. I don't even have time to widen you up. It's like, I'm really actually not getting in your ass today. Oh God, this sucks. And she's like, well, you don't always get what you want, I'm just like, oh my God. I mean, how hell on earth is that? You're having fun with someone. You really, really want to blow inside them. And then, nope, it's over. You're not going in anywhere. All because fucking condoms suck ass. Oh, man. Frustrating. You don't know. I hope you don't know. And she's like, oh, well, there's other things. I'm like, yeah, there is. All over the place. Anyway, yeah. So condoms, man. Fuck condoms. Oh, my God. I really, it's like the next time I'm with someone, I'm just going to have to buy a whole bunch of different ones and, like, hope one of them has the right length like the other ones do, but you know what it feels like? You know what her butt felt like? You ever see, like, old cartoons? Once again, I'm bringing up references that no one, like, under the age of 40 would know. But it's like, in the old cartoons, it's like, I think it was Tom and Jerry and other ones, too. It's like Tom's about to eat Jerry. He's putting him up to his mouth. And then Jerry whips out a bottle of alum, some kind of cooking ingredient, and he sprinkles it on Tom's lips, and Tom's lips go, like, all tiny, and he's like, oink, 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 trying to fit him in, and he can't. That's what trying to get into her ass felt like. It felt like a cartoony alum type thing. Okay, that was abstract. God. But yeah, I don't know. So some of the funnest times though, it's like it's like it has like nothing to even do with my dick too. It's like kind of funny. And I'm sorry I'm talking about my dick so much here, but understand, talking about sex is a great way for me to just forget that I'm upset about something. Sex is just hilarious. Sex is fun and hilarious, and just talking about it, like, you can be sitting there distraught, sad that you lost your love and all that shit, but you start talking sex, and it's like, it just overrides so many other emotions that hurt, And it's like this one chick comes over, It's like this one chick came over for the very first time, mind you, Like, this was years ago. And she comes over and she's like, yeah, sorry I'm late. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm like, yeah, it's okay, And she's sitting on one side of the couch, I'm laying down on the other side of the couch. And she goes, yeah, I've only got like an hour and a half. There's like no time to even like do anything fun. And I'm like, an hour and a half? You can't have fun with someone in an hour and a half. And she's like, I'd prefer to enjoy it. I'm like, you're saying that you can't enjoy something after an hour and a half? And she's like, well, it's better when you have a lot more time to mess around. And I'm like, an hour and a half is more than enough time for you to enjoy yourself. And she's like, I don't know. She goes, but no, this is good. I'm coming over here, the first time, and, I'm just getting to see who you are a little bit, and, if I like what's going on, I'll probably be coming back again and again, I'm like, She's like, what do you mean? I go, you really want to sit on the couch next to me here, just talking, just watching me play Second Life, watching my stupid avatar run around fucking things on Second Life while we're talking. That's really what you want to do while you're here for an hour and a half? And she's like, well, it's all we got time for. And I'm like, bedroom. She's like, are you sure? It'd suck to get only halfway. And I'm like, bedroom. So she's like, oh, okay, master, shit. So we go in the bedroom, and she's standing there, and she goes, what now, master? Just being snarky with me, And I'm like, step one, take off as many clothes as you feel comfortable. And she's like, so off with her pants. Like, and she goes, oh, and what am I supposed to do now, since you know? I'm like, nothing. And I bet that freaked her out, because she's probably thinking like, ew, this guy wants me to stand here with my pants off and do nothing. What's he gonna do? You know? I'm like, your job here is to do nothing. And she's like, what do you mean? I go, okay, you do have a job. Your job is to lay down on a bed, close your eyes, and enjoy yourself. And she's like, okay. So she hops up on the bed, you know, does exactly as she's told. She closes her eyes. And, you know, I kneel down in front of the bed. And I reach over and I yank her closer. And I pull her panties off, you know. And she's doing what I asked her to. Her eyes are closed and she's just laying back, enjoying herself. And I just look down. I look down at what's before me. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, good God, what a fucking feast. What a fucking feast. And straight went down my head. Oh my God. Glorious. Glorious. But anyway, you know, so she gets off. She gets off again. She gets off a third time, you know. And I'm just sitting there like, I'm in another world. I'm just like dopey. I'm intoxicated by this, you know. And it's like, finally she does that thing, that cute thing that chicks do, you know. It's like that hand comes down. No, she put her whole arm down there. She blocked me with her whole arm. She's like, stop, 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 stop. I'm like, oh, okay, we've had enough, have we? And she's like, yeah, no more, thank you. And I'm like, okay. So I hop up on the bed with her, you know, and I'm spooning her. And I'm hugging her. And I'm petting her face, and I'm wiping the sweat off her brow and stuff, you know, just the normal shit every guy should be doing. A lot of guys don't do that shit. It's fucking horrible from what I hear. But it's like, you know, I'm just like playing with her hair and, you know, rubbing the back of her neck and nuzzling underneath her jaw and stuff. And she looks like a gerbil, like a newborn gerbil. Her eyes are just completely closed, you know. And she goes, oh my God, this is so comfortable. She goes, this is so comfortable. And I'm like, good. I'm glad you enjoyed yourself. I go, and look, we even have enough time to sit here and get a little rest before you have to go. God, this felt so good. And like 1 minute later, it's like, she's snoring, and I'm like, oh God damn, you know. And, you know, I look at her for like a minute or two more, and I'm like, I better get some sleep too. So, you know, I close my eyes and, you know, lower my heart rate down, and, you know, I conk out as well. And, you know, however many minutes later, you know, like half hour, whatever the fuck, you know, her alarm goes off, and she grumbles, and she drags herself out of bed. And I'm just sitting there still in bed, just admiring her. You know, she was good to look at. I'm just admiring her as she's finding her pants and getting dressed and stuff. And it's just peaceful. It's just really peaceful, you know. And, you know, she's like pulling up her pants. And she stops and she looks at me and she goes, huh? And I'm like, what? What? I'm like, what happened? Are you okay? Did I hurt you or something? What happened? I'm confused. And she goes, you didn't get off. I'm like, so? She's like, no, I got off like 2 or 3 times. You didn't get off yet. And I'm like, and? I'm like, we only had an hour and a half. And we wanted a little nappy time, what? And she's like, no, I'm not like this. no. And I'm like, calm down. I'm like, did you enjoy yourself? She's like, yes. And I'm like, and did I enjoy myself? And she's like, I'm like, the answer is yes. I'm like, I've got you spattered all over my face, and I love it. It's glorious. And she's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yes. I'm like, there's nothing bad here. She's like, okay. And she's legitimately upset. She is upset that she got off a few times and I didn't. Like, you know. So, you know, she has her panties up, and then she finds her pants and she's pulling her pants up and she's doing the button on it. And she looks over at me again and she's like, she just stops what she's doing in her. She's like, and I'm like, what? And I'm looking down at my chest like I'm looking for like a scorpion walking on me or something. I'm like, what? What's wrong? And she goes, and I'm like, what? She goes, your pants are still on. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, you didn't just knock it off. Your pants never came off. And I'm like, and? I'm like, so what? And I'm like, didn't we just have this conversation? She's like, no, this ain't right. And I'm like, it's totally right. It's better than right. I go, we had an hour and a half and I made the best of what the time that was there. And I enjoyed myself greatly. And apparently it sounded like you were too. And she's like, yeah, but I'm not like this. I don't do this to people. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, get dressed, get the fuck out of here. And she's like, that sounded kind of rude. And I'm like, you're being silly. I didn't know what else to say. She's like, and she finds her phone and she picks up her phone and she's like, okay, I have about 10 minutes. I have about 10 minutes to play with. She's like, do you want me to like give you a quick hand job or something, or try to blow you real quick, or and I'm just like, oh God, that sounds good, but no. I go, you have a place to be. You can't be here. I'm like, you've got somewhere to go. You can't stay here. I'm like, you're getting dressed in a rush for a reason. You have places to go. You have a day to begin. And she's like, oh God, I don't do this to people. I swear to God I don't. And I'm like, I believe you. I believe you totally. Okay? And she's like, do you? And I'm like, yeah, it's okay. I go, I'm still dizzy from having my head down there. I'm loving this. You know? And she's like, and she gets dressed, you know, all the way. She gets her purse, she gets her phone and all that shit, and, you know, fixes her top or whatever. And she starts walking out of the bedroom. She goes, I'll make this up to you. I promise. I'll come back soon, and I'll do for you what you did to me. I promise. And I'm like, okay, a rain date then, a rain check, whatever. Bye. I'm like, calm down. And she's like, I don't do this to people. I'm like, it's like, okay, I get it, you know. I don't know. It was funny. I mean, it's like, you know, there wasn't even a talk of condoms because my pants never even came off, you know. And you know, before she left, you know, I go, you shouldn't even be freaking out because you accomplished your goal of coming here. I go, you wanted to know who I am, and you can clearly see I'm not a selfish bastard. And she's like, yeah, that's a good point. That's definitely true. Oh, man. How long has this video been running? Jesus Christ. Yeah, that chick was amazing, though. My God. I'm there on the internet one day, and she messages me, and she goes, you doing anything tonight? I'm like, no, not really. I was just gonna fap and go to sleep, probably, you know. And she's like, well, can I come over? I'm like, oh, how long? And she's like, a couple hours. I'm like, what for? Being a smartass. And she's like, I need dick. I'm like, okay. I go, what time? And she goes, 8 p.m. And I'm like, I'm gonna be dead to the world by 8 p.m. Definitely. I'm gonna be at another place. I'm gonna be out cold. And she goes, so I can't come over today. And I'm like, no, you can still come over. And she's like, I can? She's like, but you said you'd be asleep. I'm like, I'm gonna leave the door unlocked. And she's like, okay, 8 o'clock. So, hours later, I am out cold. I'm having a dream. I don't know what the fuck the dream was. It's irrelevant. But there's this thing that I have done to myself in dreams now where I can't remember the last nightmare I had. It's been years. No, that's not true. I did have a nightmare or two after my love died. Not very powerful nightmares, but they were... Anyway, this thing that I've been doing to myself in my dreams, it's like, when I'm aware that I'm in a dream, I show up to talk to me, and I ask me if I want to stay or not. So I'm having a dream, whatever the fuck it was, who gives a shit. I'm having this dream, and I walk up to myself, and I'm like, yo, wake up. And I'm like, why? And, my other self is like, just wake up, stupid. I'm like, whatever. So I start to wake up, and immediately I realize something's wrong. All my furniture's gone. No. No, immediately I realize something's wrong. I can't move. I'm like, what the fuck? And there's two hands on my upper legs pressing down hard on them, holding me in place. And I'm like, my blankets are off. Why are my blankets off? And what's holding me down, And where my dick should be is the top of a head, like the top of a face. And it's just doing what faces do down there. And, this alarmed me, and my hips jumped. And when my hips jumped, this head's just like... right back to it. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like, I didn't even hear you come in. I didn't even hear you come in and get undressed. I didn't even hear you, get up on the bed. How long have you been... This girl has me halfway to blowing my load already. I've been asleep. And she had worked on me so well, and so quietly, and so stealthily. I was already halfway there, and I'm just like, my hands reach down and grab the fucking sheets, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Oh, shit. I'm getting excited. And it's like, I look down and I'm like, oh my God, this is fucking awesome. And she's like, good morning. I'm like, Jesus. And I'll tell you, that is easily one of the best things in the world. That. Waking up, there's a head there, and they've been doing a masterful job on you while you slept, and you're waking up just in time to enjoy it. It used to be like, people would be like, what's the most happy moment in your life that you remember, And you get that guy and he's like, and you're like, oh God, it's a child story. It's like, I remember the first time we came back from the hospital. And my baby girl looked at me and opened up her eyes for the first time. And I'm just like, oh, you procreated. Oh, wow, that's magical. Wow. Props. Wow, you did what a lot of people do. That's amazing. And someone else will be like, oh, I remember the happiest day of my life. And I'm like, ah, shit. Because I know it's coming. It's like, oh, we were late, but we got there, and all our relatives were there, and we walked down the aisle, and I'm just like, oh, did you get married? Yeah, I just said that. I'm like, oh. And people look at me, and they're like, what was the happiest day in your life? They're like, what's your happiest memory that pops into your mind? And I'm just like, And they're looking at me and they're like, because I haven't said anything. I'm just sitting there smiling and growling. And then, some chick will walk by and be like, he's thinking perverted shit. And just like walk away. And they're like, okay, enough of this bullshit. I don't even know if this thing's recording. I might have not even pressed the button. Isn't that funny? I wanted to talk about my love. I wanted to talk about losing her. What she meant to me, everything that was good about her. And talking about eating chicks out and blowjobs and anal. Everybody's got their way of coping. Have a good day.
Life is real, life is earnest. If you're cold, turn up the furnace.